So I'm Tom Gillersberg. I'm from the Schiller Institute in Denmark, and I had a question on this, how we can somehow break this blackout, I would say, of what is really going on. That maybe we should have people going, say, from Greece, maybe also from Spain, trade unionists, it could be political leaders, going on tour to northern European countries, and thereby force political layers which should be responding at the present situation to really discuss the crisis, but which are presently not. I mean, basically, the way it works, as far as I can see, is the media runs a very controlled discussion of what is going on, which then means that, even left-wing parties, social democratic parties and others, trade unions, that should be extremely active on this issue right now, they simply pretend they don't know what's going on, and therefore they don't deal with it. But if you have to face up to it, so to speak, that if you have actually people coming from these countries, which is right now are the guinea pigs of this genocide that are to be performed on the people and the economies, then maybe that would be a way of trying to make some cracks in this blackout and force some kind of political response to the reality.
I can just add something to that just briefly. My name is Daniel Grasnak. I think I was at a meeting of the German Metal Workers Union, which had just completed a delegatory tour of Greece to visit their colleagues there. And what's quite symptomatic is that they're castrated because they don't have an idea of solutions.
Closer to the mic.
Especially the unionists were very clear that they don't know what to do. They're shocked by the situation, and so they freeze. They're like scared bunnies in front of a car, and they're really trapped in their current in this media discussion of the euro, that we have to save the euro as it is now. So when I posed to them that that's absolutely not the case, that the euro itself, as Professor Helga has also said, that Merkel makes a mistake, right? When she says that if the euro fails, then Europe fails. It's the other way around. Europe is failing because of the euro. Then you can actually create a rational discussion if you look at what the euro actually does, right? Then the Maastricht Treaty forbids state credit, cutting off actually the investment possibilities into the real economy, which was the way that Franklin Roosevelt solved the crisis, by producing out of the economy. And I think this focus on yesterday's panels of the development projects, to what end do we have a currency? Right? If money is a means to an end, well, what end are we pursuing? And that is something that is totally absent in all of the trade unions. As long as you accept the euro, you're stuck in the game of how do we defend against a hopeless battle of our little rights. And I think that that the blackout of the real situation will only be overcome when they understand there is a way, there is an animated idea of what the future really is. So another addition to that is that the Greek trade unionists were asking their German colleagues to tell them, they were asking what was it like in the 1930s, because what we see here is exactly that. We have everybody is splitting up into little groups, violence is on the rise, and we're afraid that Greece is going the way of Weimar Germany. So they are very conscious of where they're going, and the necessity of a vision is quite obvious.
Okay. Well, certainly information is important. What I can tell you regarding Greece is that increasingly the Greek trade unions are using international organizations like the ILO to perform what exactly the European institutions should have done. For instance, there's an ILO report last year which is articulating about labor conditions in Greece, and the outcome is that there's a violation of both the ILO labor charter, also the European Union labor charters. We haven't seen any response by the Commission services regarding this. So it's increasingly international organizations are being called to portray what is going on in Europe, and this is unique and unusual. It's unheard of historically. Usually Europe is the champion of social rights, but now international organizations are actually calling about substandard labor relations in Greece, even by third world standards, particularly in the treatment of certain labor groups, but also in the lack of any kind of support. If 1 out of 10 receives unemployment insurance, and if there is underreporting of unemployment, there is certainly a failure of the Commission services to begin with, because where is the money going and why? And so there is needs more visibility, I think, on what is exactly going on. And the labor front is important because everybody talks about the banks and the credit. Of course, the credit, nobody says where the money goes and if there is a plan for development. In Greece, they say after the situation improves, then we will have money for the welfare system, and development will eventually come from outside because they will invest. So it's a kind of miraculous investment will come from abroad, out of nowhere, and after we pay the debt, because now we have to pay the debt because we're like drug addicts, we need to have our fix, otherwise we cannot live. And it becomes like a medical necessity, because in the debate in Parliament a few weeks ago in Greece, the question was how we can have this big fix necessary. So when you have a medical emergency, you don't rationalize. We went behind the finances and the thing. It's in a medical emergency to have the money, otherwise we're dead. And this is exactly the blackmail of the situation. There's not something like, look, this money will also be investment money because some of it will be diverted in some resources. The discussion was, okay, you're against your country because you are voting against this, because you are against the funding that is going to help us live. So we're beyond the economics of a situation or irrationality. It's simply an emergency and it's a life thing. And it became like that. You love your country, vote for this. Otherwise, we're doing this because these are exceptional situations, and these exceptional situations we have to survive. And this was the rhetoric of the conservative voice, which was totally the opposite than what they said before they won the election, because the agenda was completely different. So as a whole turning around, what they said in the spring and they got elected, and now they've been saying different things. So it's not for the people to blame that they deserve the government they have. The people were exactly voted for another government. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have to discuss, not only in this room but in the public, two different topics which are interlinked. The one is, what is the consequence of the euro for the states? The euro is blocking the state activities. This is one thing. But the other thing, which is my profession, what is the influence of states to the currency? Because we never would have this debt crisis, this euro crisis, without the overdebtedness in some countries of the same monetary area. And I think it is very important for lucidity and for understanding the mess we are confronted to separate the two topics. The euro is a mortgage for every rational policy in the states, because states cannot do what they have to do. We see it in Germany. We cannot fulfill the duties given by the Constitution for the state to pay for social services, to pay for cultural expenditures and so on. But on the other side, a composite currency like the euro cannot function if you have always disturbing factors from national budgets and from national state economies. So it's a complete counterproductive system. Everything is blocked. The state is blocked by the currency, and the currency is blocked by the states. And I think this is the problem.
Do I have time to say something? Very briefly. One of the areas, just looking at this from a different perspective, there's a whole disenfranchised group of people out there, which is the young generation, which feel that they're in no way part of the system. So although the ideas that I'm hearing are great ideas, and they're made by very, very intelligent people, a lot of people out there, especially the teens, the 20s generation, they don't feel part of the system at all, and they're not receptive to anything being said by the other side or by us. So in Spain there was a movement last year called 15M. I don't know if you've seen it. You must have seen it. And I can tell you that it was organized through Wall Street money. And the guy who organized it was a ex-former Soviet emigre by the name of Vlad Zweiberg, who was a big broker on Wall Street. And he was one of the world's most important indignados, of this movement. He appeared on the cover of a lot of magazines, which makes you wonder, how the hell did this guy make it to the cover of some of the big magazines such as Vanity Fair, for example. But I know the movement and the way it was actually put together, and I was actually the person who outed it in Spain, and outed this man in Spain. And I can tell you I was at his house. He didn't know what I was involved in. He didn't know me. But it was a military operation. I come from the counterintelligence background many years ago. So I can tell you, when I was at the house and I saw the computer systems that were actually there was over $500,000 in computer systems at a guy's house who's one of these indignados who's supposed to be, one of the great unwashed. There was over $100,000 in cabling. When you start adding this up, you say to yourself, who the hell is running this thing? And when you actually see how the whole operation was with military precision put together worldwide, you understand that it was run through the center, through these people. Now, if we're smart, we can do the same thing. But actually, to do this and to get these ideas out, what we need to do is we need to make sure we play the game by the same rules, which means you have social media, which is not being used by our side, to the best of our advantage and abilities. You have Facebooks, you have Twitters, you have all these pages. Whether you like it or not is irrelevant. Through these media, you have access to almost 1 billion people out there. That's a lot of people that we can actually talk to. And there's a lot of people who feel they're not part of anything at all. Like this gentleman right there who told me the story yesterday, who became part of the LaRouche movement. He was doing things in Spain, and he came to Germany, and now he's part of the movement. There are millions of people out there who want to do the same thing. We're just not listening to them. If we can get them on board, we have an army that can never be defeated. So although we can talk about this theoretically, the point is we got to start using these media. And the point is that also there's a lot of people who have, incredible knowledge, like Professor Hankel, like Helga, this gentleman here from Greece. And then we have, this gap, as we have in the Soviet Union with the nuclear technology. You have the generation who are in their 70s who are experts, and then there's this gap of a generation because, the country was destroyed in the 1990s. So there's nobody in between the 18-year-olds and the 75-year-olds who actually have the knowledge to pick up the baton. It's the same thing in this. There's a lot of people, a lot of knowledge, but they're getting older. And the younger generation, that's one of the strengths of the LaRouche movement worldwide. Everyone in the movement is absolutely prepared, whether they're 18, 20, 25, 30, or 90. Okay, and this is something that has to be taken advantage of. And unless we understand this, we can't win this. Because there's just simply not enough money or bodies or media. They control the media. But as the 15M movement showed in Spain, we can control the social media. We can win this thing. It's about controlling the hearts and minds of that generation who feel absolutely left out by everyone in the world.
Trade unions in Greece at present, they seem to have lost their previous power. They have been almost paralyzed, partly because of poverty and huge unemployment, but also because the wider people do not trust them, do not trust trade unionists, and they don't trust traditional politicians. As a result, the extreme right and the extreme left grows stronger and stronger. And this is a very, very bad danger for democracy. And not only that, if this poverty continues, this terrible situation we're facing here in Greece goes on as it goes now, there are fears that we might have very, very bad conditions with mass demonstrations, and perhaps God knows what is going to happen. That's why I hope, and we ask the European partners, the main European partners, to look better at the social situation, the social and political upheaval here. It's not right, it's not correct to have right-wing, left-wing, extreme from one and from the other side, because this will lead to very, very, very bad conditions. And trade unions, as I said, have lost the game from their hands.
Unfortunately, you are.
This is my comment, if I may understood the question, because forgive me, but I don't hear very well, so I try to do my best.
Yes, you were clearly expressing yourself. I unfortunately have to agree, because the trade unions and the establishment politicians, they are in the back. I mean, look at the German spectrum of politicians. The so-called opposition is more pro-Europe, more pro-austerity, more pro-Eurobond than the present government, which is bad enough. So I think that, I think we really have to address the problem as a totality, because, the European Union, the Swiss government and the British government have all active plans for a social explosion in Europe. The British government already more than a year ago made a contingency plan for the collapse of the euro to evacuate the British subjects from the continent through evacuation corridors, because they figure that if the euro collapses, the bank accounts close, there will be no food in a day, no gasoline, no handy function, and the scientific advisory board of the German Bundestag has made a similar study that if it comes to any such emergency, in one day everything stops, and then frankly also a European army or many national armies don't really help, because these people have to eat too. The Swiss government has made contingency plans to close the border, because they expect that there will be, millions, if not tens and hundreds of millions of people trying to get into Switzerland, which is a relatively stable country as compared to the Eurozone, and the Swiss are very lucky that they are not in the Euro. But the Swiss is a small place, and, the Swiss don't want million refugees to come, because they're already very upset because there are, I think, 10% of the Swiss are now Germans. And after Steinbrück's remark about the cavalry, the Germans are not so welcomed at this point. But, also the European Union, they have maps which you can download in the internet where they have zones where they expect the biggest social upheaval. One is Berlin, another one is NRW, Rhine-Main, the suburbs of France. I don't have them all in my mind now, but they are planning this, And I think that, I have talked to enough people in the United States and in Europe to be pretty sure that the top elites know that this banking system could evaporate tomorrow morning or maybe tonight at 2 o'clock when the Asian markets open. This is so fragile, it could evaporate. And that's why they are hysterically trying to pump hyperinflationary money, which is the most brutal expropriation of the ordinary people, because, once you have hyperinflation, everything you thought you have for your pension, for, your medical emergencies or whatnot, will be gone. And they are willing to risk this. I know some people who I don't want to name here because of confidence and trust. I know one very, let's say, distinguished German person, I don't want to even qualify it more, who's told me that when the ESM was implemented, he said these people have to be executed at the wall and they have to stand there for 1 full hour to suffer the pain of what is going to happen to them. He was beyond his wits, and if I would tell you the name, I would have never thought that such a person would ever say that. And that's true. They are gambling with the lives of people. What is happening now in Greece, in Spain, in Italy, and in the poor areas of the United States or even Germany, is genocide. And I think we should stop being so naive, because when Daniel was saying it's a war against the people, it is true, because this elite does not respect the lives of people. Do you think the condition of Africa has to be like that? Jean Siegler, who was mentioned earlier, he said that, the same EU Commission which is putting dumping price food exports into Africa is then turning around and having gunboats shooting on the people who are fleeing away from hunger in Africa, killing hundreds and thousands over the year. Now, this is a murderous policy, and I think that, when we basically say we need a paradigm shift, it's not going to be a small paradigm shift. I think we need the whole package. We need, first step, Glass-Steagall, because without Glass-Steagall, this speculative bubble will not disappear, and even if we go back to national currencies, you have to end the system of high-risk speculation. Then the second step has to be the replacement of a credit. You have to have a credit system for future investments. And, we have developed this plan for the reconstruction of southern Europe, the Mediterranean, and some parts of Africa. Yesterday we added the Middle East development plan. And these development plans have to be on absolutely strict scientific principles. And Mr. LaRouche this afternoon or this morning in his short video address said in a compact way everything which is necessary. But the key is really increased energy flux density rates, because we cannot not have just some investment, but it has to be absolutely in tune with the laws of the universe, and the universe is developing in an anti-entropic way with increased energy flux density rates. This is why now this sidekick of Schellenhuber, what is his name? What? No. The one who came out with a Green Marshall Plan for Southern Europe. If you now go into desert tech kind of projects, covering all of Greece islands with solar panels. I was in Rhodes in October, And roads 3 years ago had no solar panels. Now you have entire parks of solar panels, making the landscape looking absolutely disgusting, And it's not good. It's not a solution. And I know that some people think they have to add solar energy to have access to being heard. But this is wrong, because it's wrong from any economic, physical standpoint, because it's not only the question of that it's not efficient, that it's a wrong direction of investment into R&D, but it is also absorbing capacities which you urgently need to go in the other direction. And the Greenies know that very well. They are fanatic on this question. So what I'm saying is we need the whole package, and we need to find those people in the institutions and outside, people who just become political, like Mrs. Posetto yesterday, she expressed that. And we have to have a discussion about the total paradigm shift, and the paradigm shift has to emphatically also agree on the question that man can no longer rely on sense certainty, because as long as we remain in the realm of statistics and monetarism and all of these things, we will not really get out of this. But we must really catapult this whole debate into the realm of understanding universal principles of, putting the economy and the political system in cohesion with the physical universe. And that is the real challenge. And I think that, therefore, we need a lot of people like the space scientists and others, because they are the only people, and some educated Mittelstand people, who do that in practice. Because, in the former times, a family entrepreneur would normally be also an inventor. That's why you still have the most patents in Germany, in the world, despite this collapse. Because somebody who invents something has to conquer a physical universal principle. And when that principle is applied in the production process, it increases the productivity of both the labor force and the industrial capacity. And that has to be understood as the only source of wealth. It is not raw materials, it's not possession of land, it's not all of these things. The only source of wealth is the creative mind of the person. And that creativity is expressed in science, in great classical art. And we have to shift the debate onto that level, because as long as we remain on a lower level, the paradigm shift will not occur in the necessary way. So I would like to, just inject that into the discussion.